Good afternoon, ladies. Welcome back to Ladies Bible Study. My name is Starr, and this is the Ladies Bible Study for New Hope Baptist. And today we're going to finish up the second half of our lesson that we started last week on the single mother. And so I hope you'll take the time to get out your notebooks and your Bible, your pencil or pen or your favorite pen or whatever, your cup of coffee, and sit down and join me for a little bit. And I hope you'll take a few minutes to, if this is your first time, I hope you'll take a few minutes to introduce yourself. Say, hey, I was here, let me know how you found the Bible study. And if you'd like the study notes, I'd be happy to send those to you, but I will need your email address. My email will be down in the description box, and so you can just jot me a note and tell me your preference, and I'll make sure I get those sent to you. I'll add you to the mailing list. But today we're going to pick it right up with number 8. Like I said, it's the second half of our lesson on the single mother, and I have to correct last week when I was in a big way of teaching, and sometimes I'll just talk and then not even realize what I said. So I hope if I make a mistake in a name or something like that, that you'll have a little grace with me. But sometimes when I go back through and listen to parts of it or read people's comments or whatever, it'll hit me. Oh no, you said this or that, And last week when I was teaching, I referred to Moses' mother as Zipporah, when his mother's name, I know full well, is Jochebed. So I should have said that. So I hope you'll forgive me for that faux pas. And it happens occasionally. I'm human. I'm made of the same flesh you are, but I hope that you'll just have a little grace with me when it comes to stuff like that. I'll try not to sound like an imbecile when I teach, but I can't make huge promises. But today we're going to pick it up with number 8. That's where we kind of left off. And that question says, well, let me back up a little bit here. Let's back it up to number 7. What do the stories of Moses and Samuel, that's where we ended at. What do the stories of Moses and Samuel teach us about raising children for God in a corrupt environment? That was the last question that we covered in the lesson last week. And then number 8 says, what do they teach about the power and influence of the mother's instruction and example? And so it's imperative that if you're the only one who's teaching your children biblical principles, you're teaching them and training them, you just need to use the Bible more and more, and then look for more ways, and then look for even more ways to implement that in their lives. They have to have a Bible answer for everything that happens in their life. Let them see Jesus, how he's working in your life, and how the Bible comes into play in your daily life. They just need to see that stuff everywhere in their daily life. It's a book of wisdom and it's instruction, and that's what's going to equip them for living a holy, righteous life, even if they're in not the best of circumstances or the best environment. They need to be able to look to God's word, and that's what Timothy's mother and grandmother did with him. I believe they took every instance they had to teach that young man, and look what it did for him. And then Moses and Samuel's mothers as well did the same thing. All of these men, they lived in hard times, very, very hard times, very corrupt environments, in the middle of very wicked people, wicked sinners, great persecution. And look what God did with them. He used them because they had the right stuff in them when they were growing up. And so your influence in your children's lives has far more weight and power than you even realize, far more than I realize. And it will reach out much further than you can even fathom. And it's not just your instruction to them, it's your example. It's not do as I say, it's do as I do. Follow me. I'm going to set an example for you, and I want you to do the same. So don't be careful not to have it in your life. That's such an awful way to raise a child. Don't do as I say, do as I do, or anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. Don't do as I do as I say. That's an awful way, that's a rotten way to think when it comes to raising your kids, or even just living the Christian life. Be a good example. You can teach them until you're blue in the face, but if you're a terrible example, that doesn't work. If you're a terrible example of what you're trying to teach them, it's all going to be for naught. It'll be like spinning your wheels. You're not going to get anywhere. Make sure that your priorities are in line with the Bible, and make sure that what you're teaching them in word, like I said, you're exhibiting that by example as well. And kids, they'll pick up on our habits, won't they? But they pick up on the bad ones a whole lot quicker than they pick up on our good habits. So make sure that your good ones are what they see. That's a hard lesson for us, when we see or hear our child um, doing something that they've picked up from watching us or listening to us. And sometimes it's hard when we see ourselves and our child and we think, oh man, I don't like it that they say that or do that, but um, that's what they've seen. So we just really need to be careful and ask ourselves, what has my child learned by word or example from me? Not, and like I said, if you just watch them closely for a day, you'll see yourself, and you'll probably see some things that you'll want to change, right? But don't despair. You'll get there. I don't. None of us will ever reach perfection in that area, but we can always keep trying, right? And you'll get there eventually. I promise. And the blessings on the other side far outweigh the work that's required to teach them now while they're young. But don't give up. Don't stop before it's time. Number 9 says, why do children of a single parent especially need constant fellowship in the local church? And so to answer this question, the further I went into this lesson, the more I thought, man, I wish I could just have one of our single mamas sitting here with me to help answer these questions. Because while I can answer them from the Bible, I went to one of our single moms and I basically asked, could you just unzip your heart for a little bit and let me peek inside? Could you do that for me and help me to know a little bit better what it is that a single mama deals with on a daily basis? And so I went to one of our single moms and I did that with her. Asked her to share her heart with me. And this young lady was very glad to do that, very glad to help with it. But she has an added layer of not just being a single mom, but of being a single mom with a special needs child. So she has that added layer of responsibility in her life. And so her daughter's needs require most of her time and energy. Honestly, her day revolves around taking care of her daughter. Just moving her from the house in and out of the car, that's a feat of strength for her because her daughter, I asked her just the other, I think she either turned 10 or 11. And she's a big girl, a 10-year-old is a big kid, and so she moves her daughter around, and that's a lot for her. That can you imagine having to lift your 10-year-old in and out of a chair, in and out of a vehicle, in and out of the tub, or in and out of bed? That's a lot of work. And so she has that added layer. But even under the struggle of that kind of burden, I've never seen her without the most beautiful smile on her face. And I'm sure she's had her days filled with tears. I'm sure of that. She's had her struggles. Her daughter has dealt with a lot of physical issues, a lot of seizures, a lot of hospitalizations, a lot of medication, things like that to help. But I never see her looking any other way but with a smile on her face, just peace. It's pretty incredible. But you'd never know it. To think that she's had bad days, you'd never know it to talk with her. She's just the happiest person. And I say that to her often, She just has such a joy and a peace about her, even carrying that heavy responsibility that she does. And I asked her, like I said, to weigh in on some of these thoughts, and I hope they'll be a help to you, like they were to me, in trying to understand the heart of a single mom. And so I asked her, what one thing has helped you the most as you've traveled the road of being a single mother? And so she said, and I know this is so, having the loving support of family and friends, having people around you that can be a help to you, that you can count on. And she said there's so many limitations with even simple things like running to the pharmacy to pick up meds, or being able to depend on my mom for help with that kind of thing has been a blessing. She said grocery delivery is a huge one, which I can imagine it is. And like I mentioned, she deals with seizures with her daughter, anxiety, and just the constant lifting of her from the house to the car to the wheelchair to the car, all of it. And then putting groceries in the car. And she said grocery delivery has just made life so much easier. And I can imagine it has. And as a side note, she didn't say this, but I thought, why not call if you're running to the store and you live nearby or if you live nearby a single mama, why not just give her a call and say, hey, I'm going to run to the store and pick up a few things. Is there anything I can grab for you while I'm there? Because just think about it. A single mom, if she has multiple children, loading all of those kids into the car, grabbing diaper bags and getting shoes on and getting them in their car seats and then trying to corral all of them safely in a grocery store. It's a lot. Especially if she only has to go for a couple things. Maybe she only needs diapers, or maybe she just needs a gallon of milk or bread or something. Just call before you go if you live nearby and say, hey, is there something I can grab for you? I'm going to run out real quick. What a blessing that would be to her to just do that. Not to mention the added expense of the gas that's used for her to drive her car to the store and back, and when gas is almost $4 a gallon, there's no sense in two cars going that direction for just a couple things. Anyway, offer to lend a helping hand. And then I asked, what things could a church family do to help ease the burden on a single mother? And she said her personal experience is having the acceptance and support of a church family. And back up to the other question, what one thing has helped you the most? There are a lot of single moms that don't have what she has. And I know she realizes the blessing of that, but there are a lot of single moms that don't have family nearby to depend on to help them with things. They do it all. And many of them work a job outside the home, and so they're transporting their children back and forth to school events and homeschool things, and they're very busy, doctor visits, all kinds of, just think of the things that you do that your husband might help you with, but a single mom has to do it all. And so a lot of these single mamas don't have that blessing of having parents around or family, or maybe even a church family. Maybe they're not saved and they don't know the blessing of that yet. So, but her experience, she said, is having that support of a church family. And she said there's always a few ladies that'll reach out to me when we haven't spoken for a little bit to check on me or her daughter, to let us know they're thinking about us and praying for us, and also asking if we need anything. And she said it's very encouraging to know people care, even when there aren't any actions behind it, just to know that they're thinking about you. A lot of time there's nothing I can think of that I need, but knowing that we're loved and supported is the biggest blessing to me from our church family. And this goes along with the feelings of loneliness that a single parent feels. It's important for them to know that we're there for them. So just a simple phone call to say I'm thinking about you. And then I asked, what encouragement do you have for others who are in the same situation? And she said, allow others to help when they offer. So many times when you ask, is there anything I can do for you? That's kind of an open-ended question, and not many people know how to respond to that, honestly. How many times has somebody asked you that and you said, oh, could you come in and do my laundry? I have a sink full of dishes, or my house really needs to be clean. Would you mind vacuuming? Nobody's going to say that stuff. I need to run to the store. I always say just find something to do and do it, rather than saying, is there anything I can do for you? But she says, when others offer help, take them up on it. Ask for help from someone you can trust. We can't do this alone, no matter how hard we try. And then she cited the verse 2 Corinthians 12:9, which I put at a later time in the lesson, so I thought it was neat that she added this verse. 2 Corinthians 12:9, and he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly therefore will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And remember that even though I'm a single mother, this is her still speaking, Jesus is with me every step of the way. There's times when the weight seems too heavy to hold, but reading my Bible and remembering God's promises truly helps get me through those moments. And I love that she added that part as well, that Jesus is always with her. And I hope hearing her comments will be a help to you if you're a single mom. And always remember the Lord is with you. And you can cling to him. He's always right there. And if you're a church member looking for ways to be a blessing to a single mama or to a single parent, why not, like I said, give them a call once in a while, and just to encourage their heart, or like I said, to offer to stop at the store for them, or just randomly drop off their favorite drink, their favorite iced drink, or their favorite coffee, or something like that. Number 10 says, what commands does God give the church regarding the fatherless? Well, here's just a few that I found. I'm sure there are other scriptures that abound, concerning our responsibility towards them, but just a few. James 1:27 says, pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, And I highlighted this part: to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. So first of all, I saw that we're to visit the fatherless, spend time with them, go to their house, see what their needs are. Isaiah 1:17 says, learn to do well, seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. And so this phrase, judge the fatherless, means to speak up for them. There are a lot of people that will trample on a single mom and her kids because of their situation. They're vulnerable, and so they get taken advantage of a lot. And so to judge the fatherless means to speak up for them when people are doing them wrong. Be mindful of their situation. Psalm 82 verse 3 says, defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy. So protect them, watch out for them. They don't have anybody to do that for them. Deuteronomy 10:18 says, he doth execute the judgment of the fatherless and widow, and loveth the stranger, in giving him food and raiment. So here we have an example of what God does for them. He executes judgment for the fatherless. So if you're in a church that has a bus ministry, you're going to encounter fatherless children. You just are. If they bus in kids from any area, you're going to encounter a child that probably spends one weekend at mom's and the next at dad's, or whatever. If you teach a Sunday school class, or if you work in a King's Kids ministry, the same thing is true. And so you have such a wonderful opportunity to be a blessing and a help to the fatherless there in those ministries. Number 11 says, list the special needs of single mothers. And again, I went to her and asked her, specifically, what are some special needs that you have? And so she said, and this was so helpful, she said, and the thing is, what she wrote down is probably what any mother would write down, single or not. Any mother would want any of these things that she's saying are needs, but especially for a single mama, when you don't have anybody there to take care of the children so that you can do these things. And so she said, I found myself needing quiet time where I silence everything and focus in on just the silence. I usually do that in the early morning or after bedtime. I perform better as a mom when I get enough rest, and also when I take care of myself, showering, painting my nails, doing my hair, my makeup. I do well with words of affirmation from loved ones. It keeps me encouraged and moving forward. I would never ask for it, but when people are able to provide that to me as a single mom, it just provides that extra little support. And I found myself feeling burdened with housework before, so I've reached out and asked for help with that. But that's another thing that not everyone can do. There's days that go by that I don't talk to another adult at all. So having someone to talk to occasionally is a necessity for me. A need for me specifically is getting fresh air. And most days that means just opening the windows for a little breeze, because she can't just up and go for a jog, walk. It somehow makes me a whole different person. So just to recap kind of what she said here, first of all, some quiet downtime. That's almost impossible for a single mom that has total responsibility of the children, unless you have family nearby that are willing to come in and sit with your kids, so that you can do that. Adequate real rest. Does a mom ever really rest? But especially a single mom where there's no father present. I mean, your mind is probably always engaged, even when you're sleeping. Words of affirmation. There's a biblical principle here that she brings out that we shouldn't overlook, and that's Proverbs 25 verse 11, and it says, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. This is true not just for a single mother, but for anybody that we speak to, because our words are so powerful, and we really need to be careful to make sure that they're words that build others up and not tear them down. So don't be sarcastic and snarky and bitey and, I really don't like that kind of thing. I don't like that kind of talk, Sometimes it's funny, you tease and you jab one another, but man, a little sarcasm goes a long way with me, There's just something really special and powerful about a word that's fitly spoken. You said it at just the right time. The right word at the right time, it really has power to heal and strengthen somebody that's going through difficulty. It has the power to help guide them, maybe rescue them a little bit if they're in a deep pit. And it's like an apple. It's like an apple made out of gold that's set on the most beautiful silver tray that you could ever imagine. That's how the Bible compares it, a word that's fitly spoken. And then she mentioned someone to talk to, besides kids and four walls, right? And adult conversation. That's what she craves. And again, that shows the importance of our words and communication. And then she mentioned getting out for fresh air. And taking care of children all day by yourself can get really tedious, especially when you add in the layer of care surrounding a special needs child. And there have been a lot of great leaders and philosophers that know the importance of getting outside to just get fresh air, to do some grounding. Have you ever read about that? Grounding, being outside on the ground in your bare feet and what it does for you physically. Look it up. It's really interesting, what it does for you health-wise. And then it helps to refresh your spirit and your focus. Even if you're just having a bad day or a down day, maybe things haven't gone exactly right, just going outside for a little bit, it can just really help clear your mind and brighten your mood. Number 12 says, list some ways you can be of help to the single mothers in your church. And I think the answers that we just went through that she shared with us say it all, right? Those really were a help to me in knowing how to help a single mom. So I think all of that addresses this question. Number 13 says, write out each phrase of the 23rd Psalm, and then under each phrase, discuss how that promise relates to you as a mother. This was so good. And we know the 23rd, and I broke it up. Let me do my best to read it here. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So let's back up and take each one of these phrases, and we'll just go through it quickly here. So for the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I said, as a single mother or a married mother, I have all I need in him. All I need. The Bible says, I shall not want. I have all I need. And then he maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. When I grew extremely weary in the work of raising my babies, and we get weary, don't we? Some days are just absolutely exhausting. He knows how to give me real rest. And he doesn't purposely lead me down dangerous, rough, rocky paths. He leads me in a gentle, peaceful, restful way. That's him. That's how he leads me. He doesn't lead me into trouble. He's with me when I get into trouble, but he doesn't lead me into it. He leads me beside still waters. He wants me to be at peace and have rest in my life. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. So when I've given all that I can and I feel like I don't have any more to give, he restores me daily and helps me to do right as I follow him. So he restores my soul. Some days we just feel like I don't have any more, but he's there and he can help us. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And I love that it's the shadow of death, right? It's just a shadow. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. So when I'm alone in the dark, this is a valid fear sometimes for women. They don't like to be alone in the dark. They don't like it that there's no other person in the house, no man in the house to protect them. But when I'm alone in the dark, I don't have to be afraid, I know he's with me. He sees me. He protects me. Then thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. So even in the midst of a hard life, he's prepared so much for me to be a blessing to me. I truly have much more than I need. I'm a very blessed. We are very blessed, aren't we? Very, very blessed. He prepares a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. He anoints my head with oil. My cup runneth over. I have way more than what I could ever need. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So even at the end of this life, he has more waiting for us. More, much more. Things in heaven. things I can't even fathom. He's a good God to us. He really is. And this is a good spiritual exercise, what we just did there in Proverbs or Psalm 23. And you could choose any scripture passage, honestly. Um, write out each phrase and write out each phrase and then ask, how can I as a mother apply these principles to my life? And I'd really love to hear what you got, even if it's just from this one question. I'd love to hear what you got from that. So I hope you'll take a minute to share your comments with me. It really helps me to know who's out there listening. I know, every once in a while I hear, a comment, rarely. But it really does help my heart to know who's listening, and if you're even getting anything out of it, what it does for you, how it helps you. Number 14 says, if you're a single mother, list your frustrations regarding your circumstance, and then honestly mark the ones that you may have used in the past as an excuse for failing in some area. And then place beside each item on the list a Bible promise on which to stand that you could have victory. And I kind of left this one mostly blank on purpose because I feel like this is a really personal one. It's a really personal question between a mama and the Lord. But can I just urge you to let the Lord help you when he works on your heart about something? I feel like this one, some of us would have to say, don't get me started on the list of frustrations, and we'd get out our pen and paper, and our pen would be writing 90 miles an hour. These are my frustrations. So I think we have to be careful about that stuff, because once you get started down that path, it's like, oh boy, Katie barred the door, and all we can see is the negative. So yes, write down what your frustrations are, but I would say don't air them in a public forum, like on Facebook or in any kind of group setting, because we all deal with frustrations, but mentally it's not good to stay there to think about all these things that frustrate me, other than if you were to write them down and take them to the Lord and ask him to help you with it. And don't use those frustrations to say, this is why I can't follow the Lord, this is why I can't be faithful, this is why this happened. Don't blame your frustrations and your circumstances on why you can't do something for the Lord and I'm probably not even saying that right, but I think you know what I mean. I don't think any of us truly want to share our lists of frustrations. But like I said, if you do write out something like that, just offer it up to the Lord and ask him to help you. Ask him to help you learn to be content through your trials, because airing stuff like that publicly, that's just not healthy for you or your children. Paul reminds us in Philippians chapter 4 that I have learned in what sort of state I am therewith to be content. Life happens, things happen, and you have to learn to make the best of it, to get through that thing, not around it or over it, but get through it, stay under it, and let the Lord help you. And then here's where I wrote out 2 Corinthians chapter 12, which is the same verse that that young lady shared, 2 Corinthians 12, verses 9 and 10. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong. Good verse. And if you struggle with remembering that kind of thing, I would write those verses out on a 3x5 card and stick it on the fridge so that you can see it every day. And just remind yourself that it's helpful for us. It's helpful for our spirit. When we're weak, we can be strong in Christ. Number 15 says, what steps can you take to ensure your children will not grow bitter against God because of their situation? And boy, I'm sure this happens. Whenever there's a divided home situation, many times one parent will turn the children against the other, or the child will end up, living with two families, dad's family and mom's family, and bitterness can set in. Bitterness is anger and disappointment at being treated unfairly, because a kid will internalize that stuff and think somehow they must be at fault for this, that somehow they bear some of the blame. It's not so, but that's what children think. So they'll become angry or disappointed at being treated unfairly. Why did my dad leave? Why did he leave me here alone or without him? And they'll begin to resent. They'll begin to have resentment in their heart. And so bitterness can absolutely destroy a life, not just your children's, but yours as well. And it takes diligence to prevent that from taking over your child's life. Diligence. And it's hard enough to conquer that sometimes in our own life. When we're dealing with hard situations and hard relationships, it's hard to conquer bitterness in our own life, let alone helping our children not to get that way. But we need to be diligent in helping them to think right, because that's going to determine their future outlook on life and how to interact with others in the future when they get hurt by somebody. So unless you make a conscious decision to not get better, to not get bitter, and to help your children be the same way, lead your children in the same way, it's almost guaranteed that you will get bitter. You have to make a conscious decision to, I'm not going to get bitter about this. I'm not going to get bitter about this. I remember when, and this is not a divided home situation, but there was a loss in our life several years ago where something happened. And I remember my husband gathering our entire family around me, the kids, all of us. And he's like, we're not bitter, are we? None of us are bitter about this, are we? He was very diligent to make sure that we weren't going to get bitter over the situation that had just happened, because he knew it would hurt us in the process of trying to heal through that thing. He knew that any one of us getting bitter over it would be damaging. So I appreciate that about him. 1 Peter 1:15 says, looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. Bitterness doesn't really just hurt you. It hurts. It hurts you. I was going to say it doesn't really do anything to people you're bitter against. It hurts you, and those around you, your children. And we know the first mention of bitterness in the Bible was Esau, who was the son of Isaac and Rebekah, when he felt he'd been done wrong, right? And he cried out with a bitter cry. And we know that he wound up rejecting the grace of God and becoming a profane fornicator. And it's like God was saying to all parents, protect your children from becoming bitter. It's not a good thing to let them get that way. And so back to our question, how can you ensure that your children don't grow bitter against God? Here's just a few suggestions, and I'm definitely no authority on it, but just a few things that I would encourage you in is to not argue in front of the kids. If you have to have a hard conversations about something, do it privately. Don't do it in front of the kids. Don't let them know about any kind of a hard conversation that you might have had, an argument. Don't let them know about that stuff. Instead, remind them and instruct them about God's great love for them in every area of their life. Always keep that in front of them, God's great love for them, and find things daily to teach them and show them that principle, how much God loves them. Encourage forgiveness in every area of their life, no matter what it is, no matter how small, no matter how big. Encourage them to always be forgiving, even when the other person doesn't ask for it. And remind them of what God's forgiveness looks like. He forgives those who don't deserve it. He does. Think about ourselves. He forgives those of us who don't deserve it. Make sure they always see Jesus in you. Respond like Jesus would, speak like Jesus would, forgive like Jesus would, pray for the other person like Jesus would, because what they see in you, they're going to mimic. And if they see a bitter, unforgiving spirit in you, they're going to pick right up on that and be the same exact way. So help your child to know what to say and what to do when they hear maybe the other parent talking negatively about you or the situation that they're in, and help them to not choose a favorite parent based on what each does for them or with them. Just always keep their focus pointed towards the Lord, always, and what God would expect of them. And then the last one, how will using their situation as an excuse for their failures harm them? Meaning their situation of a divided home. Allowing a child to use what's happening at home to blame their failures on, that's going to set a pattern for them in their adult life, and that's not what we want. We don't want them growing up as adults blaming all of their future problems on what's happening in their life. We want them to grow up to be wise adults who know how to take responsibility for their actions rather than blaming an outcome on my current situation. We have to be really careful about that stuff because boy, those patterns get set really easily without us even realizing it's happening. So tough lesson, but I'm so thankful for, I don't think she would mind me mentioning your name. I'm so thankful for Megan popping on and sharing with me. And like I said, she basically just unzipped her heart and let me peek inside a little bit. So thank you, Megan, for that. That was so, so helpful in teaching this second half of this lesson today. So I hope if you know a single mom, that you'll take some time to just talk to her. Let her know that you're there for her. Pray with her. Stop. If you're like I said, if you're running to the store for something quick, offer to pick something up for her. Just talk to her. Keep an eye out for her. Let her know you care, that you see. And if you are a single mom, your situation doesn't have to be hopeless. You can still raise children that love the Lord and that turn out to do great things for Him. And if you're a single mom in our church and you have needs, I hope that you'll let us know what those are so that we know how to pray for you and better how to help you. And that's all the time I have for today. Thank you for popping on today and joining with me. And we certainly want to be a help to mamas everywhere, but especially to our single moms who feel like they have nobody. Well, we need to remind them that they do have somebody, that we're there for them. I love you all. I hope you look for somebody to be a blessing to today. Look for somebody to give the gospel to today. I'm off to pick up grandkids for some sleepovers, so I'm going to have a busy weekend. I had all these plans in my head, I'm going to do this and do that, and I know it's through the weekend, which is busy anyway, but I thought I'll get stuff done ahead of time, and then that'll open up, the weekend, other than our normal ministry things, it'll open up my time to be able to do some stuff. So then my husband wrote me a little bit ago, and he's like, hey, don't forget you offered to make blah, blah, blah for this event, and I'm like, oh, man. So I have a few errands to run, but that's okay. We'll still have fun. We'll make the best of the time that we have, but I love you all. That's all the time we have for today, and I will see you next week.